Okay, I know you can read, but just to make this more effective learning experience, it does help to listen as well as view or read. So I'm going to read this to you. Basically, infectious disease, the definition usually accepted for infectious disease is any illness caused by the invasion of the body by harmful organisms. These disease-causing organisms are called pathogens, and the pathogens would include things like bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and viruses. Every animal and plant happens to be susceptible to pathogens. You have tobacco mosaic virus, which causes devastating results in the tobacco industry, but it's a plant. And of course, you obviously have many viral animal diseases like Ebola. Infectious diseases are of concern because they're responsible for almost 50% of the death or mortality in developing countries. They are debilitating, causing an estimated 600 million illnesses in people each year. That's actually a low number. Patients require intensive, specialized, and often expensive medical care, and they infect livestock and crops, resulting in food shortages. There are various ways that pathogens can actually enter the human body. We will call these portals of pathogen entry. On your accompanying worksheet, I would say that A and B are referring to the gastrointestinal tract as well as the respiratory tract. The gastrointestinal tract, food is often contaminated with these microorganisms, and many are destroyed in the stomach. Examples of these would include cholera, typhoid fever, mumps, hepatitis A, poliomyelitis, bacillary dysentery, and salmonella. Respiratory tract pathogen entry is simply usually by breathing. If you inhale other people's expelled mucus, examples could be diphtheria, meningococcal meningitis, tuberculosis, whooping cough, influenza, measles, and chickenpox. On your diagram, I would say D refers to breaks in the skin surface. Any cut or abrasion will allow easy entry for pathogens. You want to maintain intact skin because your skin is actually the most effective barrier for pathogen entry. Some parasites and pathogens have adaptive features that allow them to penetrate the skin surface. And examples would include tetanus, gas gangrene, bubonic plague, hepatitis B, rabies, malaria, leptospirosis, and of course HIV. The urogenital openings, I would say, are C, which, by the way, on your diagram, you'd scratch out the last B. The B should actually be C. These are openings which provide points for pathogens responsible usually for sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, and other opportunistic infections. Example, various yeast infections like thrust. Gonorrhea would be an example, syphilis, HIV, and E. coli of the urinary tract. So diseases can actually be transmitted in a lot of different ways, but we tend to simplify it and say there's three broad different ways of transmission. Contact transmission, example by airborne droplets that you might inhale or through direct sexual contact. There's vehicular transmission, vehicle transmission, example food and waterborne, which are carried in the blood. And then there is vector transmission, where you are, for instance, bitten by an insect. So your job is to, using the diagram on your page, just show these various ways: contact with contaminated blood, direct contact with the skin, airborne droplet transmission, or insects carrying disease, or in fact the more common one, contact with contaminated. Okay, we are now just looking at some of these modes of transmission of disease in a little more detail. Vector transmission, some pathogens are transmitted between hosts by other animals that can penetrate the body's defenses. And these, of course, would include all these lovely critters on this page. Bites from a variety of them can introduce pathogens. So fleas would be typical, carried on many animals. They're responsible for the spread of numerous bacterial diseases, including the plague. Ticks, the deer tick, transmits Lyme disease from wild mammals to humans. Mosquitoes, you've already met, of course, in your chapter on Protista. The Anopheles mosquito, a tropical mosquito, is the vector for the malarial Plasmodium parasite. Rodents, mice, rats, hantavirus are carried by rodents. Infection occurs when humans come in contact with rodent droppings. Be careful when you're cleaning out that barn, sweeping up all that dust. That dust contains, of course, potentially viruses. Fruit bat, Hendra viruses are transmitted in the droppings of fruit bats, and foxes would be one mammal capable of carrying rabies. Contact transmission, again, is one of the modes of transmission of disease. The infectious agent of a disease may be spread by contact with other infected humans or animals. This would include droplet, indirect, and direct contact. In droplet transmission, mucus droplets carrying disease are discharged in the air every time you sneeze. There are millions of microparticles which are shared with your neighbors. So coughing, sneezing, laughing, talking even. Wow. You could become paranoid about some of this stuff, and that's not a good idea either. Then there's something called indirect contact. Includes touching objects that have been in contact with the source of infection. Dirty eating utensils, drinking cups, don't share that water bottle. Bedding, toys, money is filthy, and obviously you would never want to share a syringe. Then, of course, direct contact, direct transmission of an agent by physical contact between its source and a potential host. This would include things like touching, kissing, and sexual intercourse. Vehicle transmission is the transmission of disease through a medium, such as blood, water, food, or air. These would include waterborne diseases, foodborne diseases, and bloodborne diseases. By the way, a lot of these relate not only to viruses, but to bacteria. The rest of this unit will be on the bacteria, but just focus for now on the viral part of disease. So, waterborne diseases usually associated with regions with poor water treatment facilities. One of the most dangerous forms of water pollution occurs when feces enter the water supply and are ingested. And examples here would be typhoid and cholera. Then, of course, there's foodborne diseases. You'd be amazed when we get to the rest of this unit on bacteria just what leaving your food out on the counter will do, or using dishcloths that haven't been washed every day, and the amount of bacteria that reproduces in moist, warm environments is astounding. So foodborne diseases occur when food is insufficiently cooked, poorly stored, or prepared in unsanitary environments. Examples, as I mentioned, would include bacterial food poisoning. Bloodborne diseases are transmitted when body fluids from at least two animals, one of them infected, are mixed, and that would include most of the viral pathogens, including HIV and the hepatitis viruses. Viruses are found as intracellular parasites, that means within a cell, of course, in all kinds of organisms, including humans and other animals, plants, fungi, bacteria, and protists. A virus, for instance, that infects bacteria is called a bacteriophage. Many plant and animal diseases of commercial and public health importance are caused by viruses. The host range of a virus is the spectrum of host cells that the virus can invade. Most viruses are only able to invade specific cell types of only one host species. Very encouraging news is that smallpox, an absolutely lethal disease historically, was declared eradicated, that means wiped out, in 1980 by the World Health Organization, and remains the only viral disease to have been completely eliminated from the human population. I believe the only places it exists is in a couple of military labs in the Soviet Union and the US. Let's hope it stays there. So these are examples of viral pathogens. Essentially, they're the viral categories that you're doing your oral presentations on. They include the rhinoviruses. More than 100 rhinoviruses have been identified. These would include the ones that cause the common cold, which isn't all that common at all, because there's just so many different antigens that bring about different antibody responses. HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, of course, causes AIDS. Papillomavirus causes the formation of warts, and the herpes viruses, nearly 100 herpes viruses are known. Types include in humans those that cause cold sores, chickenpox, shingles, and of course genital herpes. Lysovirus, bullet-shaped virus, causes rabies. As far as I know, there's absolutely no cure, no antidote for rabies, so that's one you want to avoid. The influenza virus, constantly mutating. One of the major killers historically, the flu of 1918, the Spanish flu, causes influenza in humans. Rapid mutation has resulted in many strains. Hepatitis viruses, responsible for hepatitis A, B, and C. If you can get immunizations against those, it's a good idea, even in our country. And then, of course, the fetal viruses, which include Marburg, Ebola, and essential other hemorrhagic nasty viruses. The last slide simply shows a diagram illustrating viral infection. Viral particles, which are called virions, are engulfed. That means taken up, eaten, swallowed by phagocytic white blood cells, phagocytes, as part of the host's normal defense response. So every time you come in contact with a virus, unfortunately the virus uses that response to invade the cell. So the virus, of course, is down here. It attaches, virus attaches to the receptor sites on the surface of the cell. Everything here in beige would be the cell interior. Attachment is followed by penetration. The host cell begins to engulf the virus by basically phagocytosis. The actual process here is called endocytosis, the opposite of exocytosis, because in this case, the virion is moving into the cell. Once inside the cell, the envelope of the virus is removed. It's called uncoating. Begins to replicate. This is where it takes over the cell's machinery for making copies of itself, and of course the result of that is the synthesis or the production of millions of new virion particles, which then at some point or other burst through the cell, infect other cells. On and on it goes until nasty things happen.